Jimmy Fallon held up a photograph. And Barbra Streisand stopped breathing. It was October 2024. The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. Studio 6A at Rockefeller Center in New York City. Another Thursday night. Another celebrity interview. Another packed audience expecting laughs and stories and Jimmy's infectious energy. Barbra Streisand was promoting her latest memoir. The legendary singer, actress, director, one of the most celebrated artists in entertainment history, sat in the guest chair looking elegant and composed, telling stories with that unmistakable voice that had defined generations. Jimmy was doing what he does best. Laughing at the right moments. Asking thoughtful questions. Making his guest feel comfortable. The interview was flowing perfectly. Barbra was charming, funny, reflective. The audience was captivated. Everything was exactly as it should be. Until Jimmy reached under his desk and pulled out a photograph. "Barbra," he said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming more careful. "Before we run out of time, there's something I want to show you. Our research team found this while preparing for tonight, and I think you need to see it." He held up the photograph. An old one. The colors faded to that particular sepia tone that only comes with decades. The edges slightly worn. Clearly precious. Clearly carried and looked at many times over many years. Barbra's eyes moved to the photograph. Her smile began to fade. Her hand, which had been gesturing as she spoke, slowly rose to her chest. And then she went completely still. Not the natural stillness of someone pausing to think. The frozen stillness of someone who has just seen something that has reached into the past and grabbed them by the throat. Her mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Her eyes stayed locked on the photograph in Jimmy's hands, wide and unblinking. The audience noticed immediately. The energy in the room shifted. 300 people suddenly uncertain what they were witnessing. Jimmy leaned forward slightly. "Barbra? Are you okay?" She didn't respond. Didn't move. Didn't seem to be breathing. 40 seconds passed. The longest 40 seconds in Tonight Show history. The band members shifted uncomfortably. Questlove lowered his drumsticks. The audience sat in confused silence. Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. Jimmy's expression changed from playful host to genuine concern. He set the photograph down on his desk and stood up slightly. "Barbra? Hey, talk to me. What's happening?" Barbra's hand moved from her chest to cover her mouth. Tears were forming in her eyes, not gentle tears, but the kind that come from somewhere deep and unexpected, the kind that arrive before you can stop them. "Where?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper, cracked and raw. "Where did you get that?" Jimmy sat back down slowly, carefully. "It came from a woman named Eleanor Hartman. She's 91 years old. She lives in Brooklyn. She sent it to our producers 3 weeks ago with a letter explaining what it is and asking if we could show it to you." Barbra's hand dropped to her lap. She was staring at the photograph like it was something impossible, something that shouldn't exist. "Eleanor Hartman," Barbra repeated, and something in her voice suggested the name meant something. Everything. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1959. Barbra Streisand wasn't always Barbra Streisand, legendary icon of stage and screen. In 1959, she was Barbara Jones Streisand, a 17-year-old girl from Brooklyn with a strange voice, an unusual look, and dreams so big they scared even her. She just graduated from Erasmus Hall High School. No money for college. No connections in show business. No obvious path forward. Just a voice that didn't sound like anyone else's and a stubborn certainty that she was meant for something more than Brooklyn could offer. She was working as a theater usher and taking acting classes at night, living in a tiny apartment in Manhattan that she could barely afford, eating one meal a day to save money. She was lonely, terrified, and determined. One night in October 1959, she was ushering at a small theater in Greenwich Village. A venue that hosted experimental plays and folk music performances, the kind of place where artists who couldn't afford better performed for audiences who couldn't afford better. During intermission, Barbara was standing in the lobby when an elderly woman approached her. The woman was maybe 70, wearing a worn but elegant coat, carrying a large handbag that looked like it had traveled through decades. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said. "You're one of the ushers?" "Yes, ma'am," Barbara replied, thinking the woman needed directions to the restroom or had a complaint about her seat. "I've been watching you," the woman said. "The way you move. The way you hold yourself. You're not really an usher, are you?" Barbara blinked, surprised. "I mean, I am tonight. But not in your soul. In your soul, you're something else." Barbara should have dismissed this as the rambling of an eccentric old woman. But something in the woman's eyes, a clarity, a knowing, made her pause. "I want to be a performer," Barbara admitted, the words coming out before she could stop them. "A singer. Maybe an actress. I don't know. I just know I'm supposed to do something." The woman smiled. "I know. I can see it. What's your name?" "Barbara. Barbra Streisand." "Barbara," the woman repeated, pronouncing it carefully. "Not Barb. Not Babs. Barbara. People call me different things," Barbara said with a slight shrug. "I'm thinking of changing the spelling to just Barbara. Wanna make it more memorable." "Smart." The woman nodded. "I'm Eleanor. Eleanor Hartman. I used to be a singer too. Opera, mostly. Small venues. I never made it big, but I had my moments." They talked through the rest of intermission. Eleanor told stories of performing in the 1920s and 30s, of the joy and heartbreak of trying to make it in a world that didn't always appreciate unusual voices. Barbara listened, hungry for any wisdom, any connection to someone who understood. As the second act was about to begin, Eleanor reached into her handbag and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young woman, Eleanor, clearly, maybe in her 20s, standing on a small stage in an elegant gown, mid-performance, her mouth open in song, one hand extended toward an invisible audience. "This was me," Eleanor said, handing the photograph to Barbara. 1928. I was performing Puccini at a little venue in the village. It wasn't Carnegie Hall, but it was mine. This photo is the only proof I have that it happened. Barbara looked at the image, at the young woman frozen in her moment of performance, so alive and present even through the faded photograph. "Keep it," Eleanor said. "What?" "No, I can't." "Keep it," Eleanor insisted. "Because you're going to make it, Barbara. You have something real. And someday, when you're famous and people are taking your picture constantly, I want you to remember that it started with believing you had something worth showing. This photo is my proof. Let it be your reminder." Barbara tried to argue, but Eleanor pressed the photograph into her hands firmly. "Promise me something," the older woman said. "When you make it, not if, when, remember the girl in this photo. Remember that she was real even though the world never knew her name. Remember that every person who dreams deserves to be remembered, even if they never get famous." "I promise," Barbara said, not fully understanding but sensing the weight of the moment. Eleanor smiled. "Good. Now go. The second act is starting. And someday soon, you'll be the one on stage, not in the lobby." Barbara never saw Eleanor Hartman again. She kept the photograph though. Carried it with her through the next few years as her career slowly, painfully, miraculously began to take off. Small nightclub performances. Then larger venues. Then television. Then recordings. Then Broadway. Then Hollywood. As success came, and it came bigger than even Barbara's enormous dreams had imagined, the photograph became buried under the avalanche of her new life. New photos. Professional headshots. Magazine covers. Movie stills. The image of young Eleanor Hartman singing in 1928 got packed away in a box, then another box, then lost in storage somewhere during one of many moves. Barbara forgot about it. Not intentionally. Life just moved too fast. Too many performances. Too many accolades. Too many years. 65 years passed. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Now, in 2024, sitting in Jimmy Fallon's guest chair, 82-year-old Barbra Streisand was looking at that photograph for the first time in over 6 decades. "Eleanor sent this to us," Jimmy said quietly, reading from a card that had come with the photo. "She's 91 now. She lives in a nursing home in Brooklyn. She wrote that she gave this photo to a young usher named Barbra Streisand in 1959 and told her to keep it as a reminder. She said she's been watching your entire career, every movie, every album, every award. And she wanted you to know that she kept her promise too." "What promise?" Barbara whispered, tears now streaming openly down her face. "She promised to remember you." Jimmy read, his own voice thick with emotion. "She wrote, I told Barbara I would remember the girl who dreamed, even when the world didn't know her name yet. And I have. Every single day. And I'm so proud." The studio was absolutely silent. Not a cough. Not a whisper. 300 people holding their collective breath. Barbara reached out slowly and took the photograph from Jimmy's desk. Her hands were shaking as she held it. This image of a young woman singing on a small stage in 1928, this piece of someone else's forgotten dream that had somehow carried her forward. "She gave me this," Barbara said, her voice breaking. "When I was nobody. When I was just a girl who thought she might have something but had no proof. She gave me her proof. She gave me her moment and told me to remember it mattered." She looked up at Jimmy, then out at the audience, then directly into the camera. "And I forgot," she said. "I forgot her. I forgot this photo. I forgot the promise I made to remember that every person who dreams is real and matters. How could I forget?" Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Jimmy stood up from his desk. He walked around to Barbara's side and knelt beside her chair, something hosts simply don't do during interviews, breaking every rule of late-night television staging. "Barbara," he said gently, "Eleanor is watching tonight. She's in her nursing home in Brooklyn with her daughter and about 20 staff members who wanted to watch with her. And she asked us to tell you something." Barbara looked at him, tears making her makeup run, not caring at all about the cameras or the audience, or the fact that she was supposed to be promoting a book. She said, "Tell Barbara I forgive her for forgetting. Life got big. That's what was supposed to happen. But tell her I never forgot her. Tell her that's what happens when you really see someone, you carry them forever. And tell her thank you for making the whole world see what I saw that night, that she had something worth remembering." Barbara covered her face with both hands, the photograph still clutched in her fingers, and sobbed. Not quiet, elegant tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that came from 65 years of carrying success and losing touch with the moment before success, with the people who believed before anyone else did. The audience stood. All of them. Not applauding yet. Just standing in respect for this moment of grief and gratitude and recognition. Jimmy stayed kneeling beside her chair. He didn't rush her. Didn't try to move the show along. The producers in the control room had stopped shouting. Everyone understood this mattered more than television. When Barbara finally lowered her hands, Jimmy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, his grandfather's, monogrammed, something he carried for luck. "Keep it," he said, placing it in her hand alongside the photograph. "Like Eleanor gave you hers." Barbara looked at him, at the handkerchief, at the photograph. Then she stood up. Jimmy stood with her. And Barbra Streisand did something she'd never done in 60 years of interviews. She asked to address the audience directly. "Eleanor," she said, looking into the camera, "if you're watching, and I know you are, I see you now. I remember now. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. I'm sorry I forgot. But I promise you, I will never forget again. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten." The next day, Jimmy and his team arranged for Barbara to visit Eleanor in Brooklyn. They spent 4 hours together. Barbara brought flowers, and Eleanor brought more stories. The photograph now sits in Barbara's home, framed on her piano. Beside it, Jimmy's handkerchief, a reminder that sometimes we need to be reminded of who believed in us first. Eleanor passed away 6 months later at 92. Barbara sang at her funeral.